metal scream hit first, sharp, violent, jerking me out of sleep before my eyes even opened. Another slam followed, the kind that tells you someone isn't just trespassing, they're breaking in. I grabbed my M&P shield and slipped out the back door, moving through the dark like instinct had never left me. By the barn, shadows shifted. Then my flashlight snapped on 3 men, frozen mid-pry, crowbar dangling gas can at their feet. Hands up, I growled, weapon leveled. They tried lying, stammering, inching back, until one of them said the line that turned my blood cold. Blake said he'd be out before sunrise, one way or another. Madison Blake didn't walk onto my land the first time she arrived, like a storm, pretending to be a person. It was a blistering Tuesday afternoon, when her white Lexus rolled up my dirt driveway tires, spitting gravel like it was beneath her. She stepped out in a red power suit, so bright it looked allergic to country dust heels, stabbing into the ground like she was trying to claim the soil with every step. She held a stack of papers high, waving them the way a queen might display a decree. "Mr. Caldwell, you need to vacate immediately," she announced before she was even halfway to my porch. Her voice wasn't loud, just sharp, trained, practiced, the kind that had probably bullied half the Cedar Ridge HOA board into line. I told her politely at first that this was my ranch, passed down through 4 generations. But she didn't hear any of it. Her eyes were already scanning the fences, the barn, the fields, tallying them like assets she'd already won. Madison didn't see a family legacy. She saw buildable acreage, a gateway project, profit. And the moment she realized I wasn't signing a damn thing, the mask slipped. Her smile flattened, her posture stiffened, and her gaze turned cold enough to frost glass. On her way back to the Lexus, she paused beside my late wife's rose bush and deliberately crushed a blooming branch beneath her heel. That was the first warning. I came back to this ranch for one reason: peace. After 22 years in the Army and losing my wife, this land was the only place that still felt like mine. Quiet mornings on the porch, the smell of cedar after rain, the slow rhythm of cattle moving through the pastures. My grandfather built this house with his own hands. My father rebuilt the barn after a tornado took the roof off in '72. And Sarah, she planted the rose bushes that still climb the back fence every spring. Every inch of this place holds a memory, a lesson, or a scar. For a long time, that piece held steady. I kept to myself, maintained the fences, paid the taxes, and hired Ethan, a good kid from down the road, to help with chores after school. He'd talk about college, or trucks he wanted to fix up, or girls he didn't have the courage to talk to yet. Life was simple, predictable, a blessing I didn't dare question. But things started changing when the Cedar Ridge Estates HOA broke ground across the highway matchbox. Houses packed shoulder to shoulder, perfect lawns sprayed with chemicals, and rules long enough to qualify as scripture. Folks said it was progress. I said it looked like a mistake wearing vinyl siding. Then came the whispers. Developers sniffing around for available land. County assessors accidentally misfiling property lines. HOA board members asking in town how much water rights on the Caldwell acreage were worth. All of it sounded distant, like thunder you hear, but figure won't hit your doorstep. Until the letters started showing up. Not mail, HOA notices. Bright orange, courtesy warnings taped to my gate, non-compliant fencing, unapproved livestock structures, visual obstruction impacting community aesthetic. I wasn't even part of their neighborhood, but the implication was clear. They believed expansion was inevitable, and I was simply a pre-acquired inconvenience. I shrugged it off at first, tossed the papers into a drawer, but the sightings of unfamiliar cars slowing down near my driveway, the HOA security SUV parked just long enough to make Ethan uneasy, the smug comments Madison dropped at the grocery store. It all pointed to one truth. They weren't circling my land. They were preparing to take it. And the day Madison Blake strutted up my porch with relocation papers, everything I'd been ignoring snapped into sharp, dangerous focus. The first signs came soft, too soft. One morning I found a bright orange notice zip-tied to my front gate: unapproved structures, visible from road. The road in question was a half-mile away. Then another livestock odor complaint filed. And another failure to maintain community aesthetic. I wasn't in their community. I wasn't even in their county district. But the Cedar Ridge HOA acted like my ranch already belonged on their spreadsheet. A week later, Ethan spotted something worse: a black HOA. Security patrol SUV parked just far enough down the road to look innocent, but angled perfectly toward my pasture. The driver held binoculars, slowly lowering them when he realized he'd been seen. "Creepy as hell," Ethan muttered. I shrugged it off, but unease gnawed at me. I'd lived through war zones, patterns matter, Surveillance always comes before pressure. Always. That night, reviewing the day's footage on my cheap driveway cam, I noticed something odd. The SUV wasn't just watching. It was mapping angles like someone was planning something bigger. A blueprint in their minds, and my ranch was the target. A few days later, Madison returned this time, with 2 compliance officers, clipboards in hand, polos tucked too neatly, acting like badges made of polyester. They didn't knock. They didn't speak. They simply walked past my "No Trespassing Private Ranch" signs, as if those signs were suggestions. One officer filmed everything, narrating like he was documenting a crime scene. "Subject is refusing lawful inspection," he said, aiming his phone at me. "Lawful?" I stepped onto the porch. "You're trespassing. Again." Madison didn't even look at me. "Mr. Caldwell is being uncooperative. Note it." I pulled out my own phone hit record. "This is unlawful entry," I said clearly. "Cedar Ridge HOA has 0 jurisdiction here." The camera guy's confidence faltered. The other one fidgeted with his clipboard. But Madison, she just smiled a thin, satisfied smile until I mentioned sending the footage to Sheriff Brody. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. Not fear. Calculation. On her way back to her SUV, she paused by Sarah's rosebush, my wife's pride, and crushed a budding branch with her heel. No words, just malice. And that hurt more than any notice ever could. When Madison escalated, she didn't inch forward, she leapt. I heard the engines before I saw them, a caravan rumbling dust down my driveway. 3 SUVs, 2 pickup trucks, and a van that looked like it had been stolen off a construction site. People spilled out: surveyors, clipboard carriers, men in cheap suits. They fanned across my pasture like a swarm. "What the hell is all this?" I demanded, stepping between them and my barn. Madison marched forward, holding a folder like a trophy. "Preliminary inspection," she said sweetly. "Per the purchase agreement." What agreement? She flipped the folder open. Inside was a photocopy of a contract with a signature resembling mine, though shaky and slanted. A forgery, but cleverly done. Filed at the county that morning. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't confusion. This was theft, dressed up to look legitimate. Before I could respond, shouting erupted. One of her suits shoved Ethan when he tried stopping them from entering the cattle pen. He stumbled backward into a weak fence section. Crack! And chaos erupted. Spooked cattle surged out like a brown tidal wave. Zeus, my bull, charged straight for the brightest object in sight, Madison's white SUV. The collision sounded like metal screaming. The door caved in. The alarm shrieked. Madison dove behind a truck, shrieking. By the time I herded the cattle back, the yard looked like a battlefield: broken equipment, scattered tools, her crew covered in dust and manure. And that's when the sirens arrived. Sheriff Brody climbed out of his cruiser with a look that said he'd aged 10 years since breakfast. He scanned the wreckage: Madison's crushed SUV, her rattled crew, the broken fence, Ethan rubbing his shoulder. "Someone want to explain this circus?" he asked. Madison shoved her forged contract at him. "He assaulted my staff. This is my property now." Brody didn't even take the paper. "Ma'am, unless you have a judge's order saying that you're trespassing." I showed him the footage. I showed him the fence. I showed him the forged signature. His jaw tightened. He issued citations to them: trespassing, property damage, endangering livestock. Madison sputtered threats about corporate attorneys and inevitable annexation, but Brody shut her down cold. "Ma'am, leave this property before someone gets hurt." They retreated, humiliated. But the next day, I was served a stack of lawsuits: neglect of property, environmental violations, animal cruelty, all lies, all coordinated, all designed to financially crush me. And Michael, my lawyer, said the part I didn't want to hear: "They're trying to make you break. And they haven't even played their biggest card yet." That card came 3 nights later. I came home from fixing irrigation lines to find my front door splintered, furniture overturned, papers scattered like a storm had swept through. My desk drawers were gutted, spray painted on the wall in dripping black cell or else. My blood turned to ice. "Ethan!" I shouted, running outside. His truck sat abandoned near the gate, driver door open. Panic is a strange thing. It sharpens everything. I sprinted toward the tree line and heard a faint groan. I found him tied to an oak with baling twine, face bruised, one eye swollen shut. "Mr. Caldwell," they told me. "Give you the message," he whispered. I cut him loose, half carried him back, called 911 with shaking hands. Deputies swarmed. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital. Evidence officers photographed everything. Sheriff Brody's expression wasn't weary anymore. It was angry. "We'll bring hell down on whoever did this." But all I could think about was the quiet between his words. Because late that night, while I sat armed on the porch, replaying Ethan's bruised face in my mind, I saw headlights. Not one vehicle. Not two. A convoy rolling down the county road toward my gate. SUVs. Moving vans, security trucks, and at the front Madison Blake's new black SUV. Coming to end this, her way. The convoy didn't slow it, surrounded my gate like a military operation. Engines idled, low headlights glaring through the early dawn haze. Madison Blake stepped out first, immaculate in a white pants suit that glowed like some twisted symbol of purity. She held a fat manila envelope as if it were a weapon. "Jack Caldwell," she called, voice slicing through the cold air. "You are hereby ordered to vacate this property, effective immediately." I didn't move. She thrust the envelope toward me. "We have a court-filed eviction order. You are now trespassing on corporate-owned land. My security team will remove you if you refuse to comply." Behind her, the men in tactical vests advanced, bolt cutters in hand. Movers rolled dollies off the trucks, ready to strip my home before sunrise. I stepped forward only once, hands loose at my sides. "You touch that gate," I said, "and you'll answer for it." Madison smirked. "I already have answers, Mr. Caldwell. You're about to lose everything." The bolt cutters clamped around my chain, and then a sound rose over the engines. A deeper rumble. Dozens of pickups and flatbeds poured down the road behind her convoy, boxing them in with a wall of steel. My neighbors, my friends, and Ethan on crutches, standing tall in the back of Jenkins's truck. Madison spun stunned. The tide had turned. Before Madison could recover, a new sound cut through the standoff sirens. Not one, not two, an entire fleet. 3 sheriff's cruisers, a state fire marshal unit, 2 unmarked investigator sedans. They stopped behind the line of neighbors, like reinforcements arriving in the third act of a war. Sheriff Brody got out first, his face carved from stone. The fire marshal followed, holding a thick evidence folder. 2 state investigators stepped up beside them. Madison pointed wildly. "Sheriff, arrest him, arrest all of them. They're obstructing an official eviction." Miss Blake Brody interrupted. "We'll get to you in a moment." That shut her down. Ethan hobbled forward, supported by Jenkins. His voice was quiet but carried like a bell. "When those men jumped me, they said the first fire should have burned the barn down. Said you were mad it didn't take." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The fire marshal stepped up. "We recovered accelerant residues inside multiple burn patterns consistent with intentional ignition," he said. "And the gas cans found near the attempted break-in match prints tied to individuals associated with Blake's HOA enforcement unit." The investigator opened a folder. Additionally, the purchase agreement filed by Miss Blake contains a forged signature. Mr. Caldwell's real deed predates her claim by nearly a century. I handed over my security camera footage. Trespassing, assault, nighttime break-in, all recorded. Madison paled. Her empire of intimidation was collapsing in front of her. Sheriff Brody stepped toward her, slowly, deliberately. "Madison Blake," he said, flipping open his badge wallet, "you are under arrest." Her voice cracked. "For what?" Brody didn't hesitate. "For conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false instruments, multiple counts of aggravated trespassing, coercion, assault, and attempted arson." The crowd went silent. The deputies moved toward her. Madison backed away, shaking her head violently. "No, you don't understand. I'm the HOA president. I, my attorneys, this land, this whole area is not yours," Brody snapped. A deputy took her by the wrist. She screamed, tried to pull away, but the cuffs clicked shut. The sound was final, fatal to her reign. Her security chief was next, then the compliance officers. Each cuffed, each read their rights. Movers held back as witnesses pale and silent. As they led Madison toward the cruiser, she twisted to glare at me, hatred burning through mascara-streaked eyes. "This isn't over, Caldwell," she hissed. "People like you don't get to win." I stepped closer, meeting her gaze with a steadiness I didn't have to fake. "You came after my home, my community, my family's legacy." I leaned in just enough for only her to hear. "Trust me, it's over." The cruiser door slammed, her scream muffled behind glass. Lights flashed red against the morning sky as the convoy of law and justice rolled away. Silence settled over the ranch, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was relief, and the first breath of peace I'd felt in months. When the last of the cruisers disappeared down the driveway and the dust finally settled, a strange kind of quiet wrapped around the ranch, one I hadn't heard in months. No engines, no shouting, no threats. Just the low hum of cicadas and the distant shuffle of cattle, waking up to a dawn that somehow felt brighter. My neighbors didn't leave right away. They gathered near the gate, leaning on trucks, hands tucked into pockets, talking in low voices. They weren't celebrating, not in the loud, rowdy way men sometimes do after a victory. This was quieter, more grounded, a shared exhale after holding our breath for too damn long. Ethan, still on crutches, made his way toward me with that stubborn grin of his. The bruises on his face were fading into dull yellow and purple, but his eyes were lit with something fierce. "We did it, Mr. Caldwell," he said. "Didn't let him take a damn thing." I clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You did more than your share, kid." His mother hurried over to usher him back to the truck, thanking me. I told her it was the other way around. Watching them drive home safe was the first real relief I'd felt since the night I found him tied to that tree. One by one, folks came up: Jed Jenkins, the Rodriguez family, old man, Hemlock, the vet boys from the VFW. They offered to help fix fences, replace locks, haul debris, or just sit for coffee when things got quiet again. Standing there, surrounded by the people this land had raised and kept, I realized something that should have been obvious. Madison hadn't just attacked me, she'd attacked all of us, and we answered her together. When the last truck rolled away, I stood at the porch and let myself breathe deep, even steady. For the first time in months, the ranch didn't feel like a battleground. It felt like home again. The weeks that followed were a blur of depositions, interviews, affidavits, and courtroom hearings. Michael Sterling handled most of it, thank God. He'd call me with updates, some small, some seismic. Turns out Madison Blake wasn't just a rogue HOA president with a taste for power. She was the local spear point for a predatory development syndicate operating across 3 counties. The attempted arson on my barn, the forged deed, the fraudulent inspection teams, they were part of a larger blueprint aimed at swallowing up rural land by overwhelming owners with financial and legal pressure until they broke. But this time, they'd picked the wrong ranch. The state investigators unraveled the whole operation like a frayed rope. Landowners who'd been silent out of fear started coming forward, stories mirroring my own. Fake code violations, mysterious fires, accidental property line adjustments, a network built on intimidation. With the evidence pile growing by the day, prosecutors moved quickly. Madison and her core people were hit with charges ranging from felony fraud to conspiracy to attempted arson. The HOA board was suspended. The development company publicly denied involvement, but the subpoenas told a different story. As for me, the civil lawsuits Madison filed evaporated instantly. The judge dismissed them with prejudice and issued a clear ruling, affirming my ownership, citing the ranch's original deed and the criminal case as proof of malicious interference. Michael handed me the certified copy with a grin. "This," he said, tapping the embossed seal, "is the last nail in the coffin. Nobody can touch your land again. Not with these records." For the first time since this nightmare began, something in my chest loosened. My family's ranch was safe legally, permanently, undeniably. Fall came early that year, bringing cool mornings and long gold afternoons. The barn rebuilding became a community event, wasn't even my idea. Folks just showed up with tools, lumber, spare nails, thermoses of coffee, and enough determination to raise a building in a weekend. Watching everyone work, laughing, hammering, hauling, rebuilding, felt like a balm. The old barn that had stood through a century of storms was reborn, beam by beam, not by my hands alone, but by a community Madison had underestimated. While clearing the last pile of charred debris near the foundation, my boot hit something metallic. I bent down and picked it up, a scorched silver locket, the one I'd given Sarah on our 10th anniversary. It was blackened and empty, the photo inside burned away, but the shell survived. Just like us, just like the ranch. I cleaned it, polished it, and hung it on a nail by the new barn door where sunlight could hit it every morning. Not long after, Sarah's rosebush, the one Madison kicked, pushed up new shoots. Not timid little leaves, strong, stubborn red blooms that climbed higher than the year before. I planted a cutting beside the rebuilt barn as a promise this place, this life would keep rising. Now most mornings find me back on the porch swing with a hot cup of coffee. The kind of quiet I'd fought for returns in steady waves, the snort of a horse, the creak of the windmill, the soft footsteps of Ethan coming up the road to help after school. The ranch looks the same as ever, but I'm not the same man who sat here months ago thinking trouble was a passing cloud. Trouble came loud and furious, but we stood our ground, not with guns or rage, but with truth, neighbors, and a community unwilling to let greed win. Madison's name gets mentioned now and then in town, usually followed by a shake of the head or a low whistle. Her trials are still unfolding. Her empire is dust. As for me, I belong to this land. And after everything we survived, one truth is carved deeper than any fence post. Anyone who comes for this ranch again won't just face me, they'll face all of us.